Hi, I'm Sophia Martinez, and this is the story of how my love for baking showed me what real success means, and revealed how unfair my husband's rich family could be. For 3 years, I kept a big secret. During the day, I ran a small, cozy bakery in my neighborhood. But at night, I managed one of the most successful restaurant chains in the country. I met James Winchester at a table outside my bakery. He was different from his wealthy, stuck-up family. He was kind, down-to-earth, and really cared about my dreams. When he told me his family owned the famous Winchester Financial Group, I was shocked. But James wasn't like other rich people I'd met. He enjoyed my simple cinnamon rolls just as much as the fancy food he was used to. What James didn't know, and what no one else knew, was that I had already built my own successful business. 10 years ago, I started a restaurant chain called Bellusa, using my grandma's recipes and a small loan. It grew to 30 locations across the country. I ran everything behind the scenes and didn't put my name in the spotlight. I cared more about making great food than getting attention. After James and I got married, the problems started. His family, especially his mom, Victoria, never liked my bakery. She called it a silly hobby. Every time we had a family get-together, she looked down on me. "Sweetheart," Victoria would say, holding her wine glass, "now that you're a Winchester, you should let go of that little shop. It doesn't fit our family's image." I would just smile and change the topic while secretly planning the next opening for my restaurant chain. The funny thing was, the Winchesters were regular customers at my restaurants. Victoria especially liked hosting business dinners at our main location, bragging that she knew the owner personally, even though she didn't know it was me. Everything blew up during this year's Thanksgiving dinner. The whole Winchester family was at their mansion, and Victoria was in full control, bragging about a charity event she had just planned at Bellusa, without realizing she was praising my own restaurant. "The honor is so exclusive, so mysterious," she gushed. "That's real class, unlike some businesses that desperately advertise on sidewalk chalkboards." She shot a pointed look at me. I focused on my plate, thinking about the contract I'd signed that morning for Bellusa's international expansion. "Mother," James warned, but Victoria was just getting started. "I mean, really," she continued, "we're discussing a culinary empire here, Sophia dear. This is what a real business looks like, not some little bakery selling cupcakes to children." Richard, James's father, nodded in agreement. "The restaurant business is complex, Sophia. It requires sophistication, connections, capital, things that come with proper breeding and education." I felt James tense beside me, but I squeezed his hand under the table. After 3 years of these jabs, I'd grown used to them. Besides, I had other things on my mind, like the major business announcement Bellusa would be making tomorrow. "Speaking of proper businesses," Victoria brightened, "I've invited the owner of Bellusa to speak at next month's Winchester Foundation dinner. They've never made a public appearance, but surely they wouldn't refuse me. I'm their best customer, after all." That's when James's sister, Amanda, chimed in with the final straw. "Well, at least we won't have to endure any more tedious bakery talk at these dinners. Let's keep the conversation to real businesses, shall we?" The table erupted in elegant laughter while James started to protest. But I'd had enough. 3 years of hiding my success, of smiling through their insults, of watching them worship Bellusa while disdaining its true owner. It was time for a change. I pulled out my phone and sent a text I'd been holding on to for months. Somewhere across the city, my executive team was about to implement Protocol Winchester, a contingency plan I'd created just for this moment. "You're right, Amanda," I said quietly, rising from the table. "Let's talk about real business. In fact, why don't we continue this conversation tomorrow? Say brunch at Bellusa's private dining room." Victoria practically glowed. "You can't just reserve the owner's private room, Sophia. It's exclusive for trust." "I know, but we have a table," I interrupted, gathering my purse. I walked out of the mansion, leaving behind a confused family and a quietly smirking James, who'd discovered my secret 6 months ago and had been waiting for this moment. I couldn't help but think that tomorrow's brunch would be the most important service Bellusa had ever hosted. Protocol Winchester. The next morning, I arrived at Bellusa's flagship location 2 hours before the scheduled brunch. The restaurant was serene, calm before opening hours, full of possibility. As I walked through the kitchen, my heels clicking on the polished floors, the staff straightened to attention. They were used to seeing me in chef's whites or casual clothes, not the tailored Chanel suit I'd chosen for today. "Everything ready for Protocol Winchester?" I asked Marco, my executive chef of 8 years. He grinned, already preparing the special menu we'd planned. All set, boss. Can't wait to see their faces when they taste your Nana's original tiramisu at precisely 11 a.m. At 11 o'clock sharp, the Winchester family arrived. Victoria led the group, practically preening as she approached the maitre d'. "We're here for brunch with the owner," she announced grandly. "I'm Victoria Winchester." "My name is Thomas, your maitre d'," he replied, maintaining a perfect poker face. "Please follow me to the owner's private dining room." He led them through the main dining room, past the wine cellar I'd spent years curating, and up to the private floor. James caught my eye as they passed. The slight smile on his face told me he was enjoying this as much as I was. The reveal. The private dining room was my sanctuary, decorated with photos of every Bellusa location, awards we'd won, and, most importantly, a large portrait of my grandmother in her original restaurant in Naples. Victoria immediately zeroed in on the empty chair at the head of the table. "Will the owner be joining us soon?" she asked, smoothing her oak blouse. "The owner is already here," I said quietly, stepping out of the shadows. The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria's face went through a remarkable series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally, horror. Richard dropped his designer glasses, and Amanda's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "This is some kind of joke," Victoria finally managed. "You run a bakery?" she whispered. I smiled, taking my seat at the head of the table. "I run several businesses, actually. Bellusa is just the most famous one." I pressed a button, and a screen descended from the ceiling, displaying the restaurant chain's financial overview. 30 locations across the country, over $300 million in annual revenue, and, just wait, soon to expand internationally. "Impossible," Richard whispered. His banker's eyes were already racing over the numbers, recognizing the truth. "Let me tell you a story," I said, nodding to the staff to begin serving brunch. "It starts with my grandmother's restaurant in Naples, where I learned that great food is about more than ingredients. It's about heart, family, and tradition." As each course arrived, I explained its significance. The appetizer, my grandmother's original bread recipe. The pasta, the first dish I perfected as a child. The main course, the signature creation that launched Bellusa's success 10 years ago. "I took those recipes in a dream and built something extraordinary," I continued. "The bakery came later, a passion project where I could still work with my hands and connect with the community." Victoria stared at her untouched plate. "All those times I bragged about knowing the—" "You did know me," I said softly. "You just didn't think I was worth knowing." James reached over and squeezed my hand, pride evident in his eyes. He'd discovered my secret during a surprise visit to my office 6 months ago. Instead of feeling betrayed, he'd been amazed, and more than a little amused. "Why keep it a secret?" Amanda asked, her earlier disdain replaced by genuine curiosity. "Because success isn't about recognition," I replied. "It's about creating something meaningful. Every time someone celebrates a special moment in our restaurants, every time a food critic praises our authenticity, every time your mother bragged about our service, that meant more than any personal acclaim." Just then, Thomas appeared with an envelope. "The papers you requested, Mrs. Martinez Winchester." I opened the envelope and slid the documents across to Victoria and Richard. "This is why I invited you here today. Bellusa is expanding, and we're looking for investors. The Winchester Financial Group has first right of refusal." Richard's hands trembled as he read the proposal. The projected returns were staggering. Victoria's face turned a new shade of pale. "You're offering us a chance to invest after how we've treated you?" Victoria whispered. I stood and walked to my grandmother's portrait. "You once said the restaurant business requires sophistication, connections, and capital. You were wrong. It requires passion, integrity, and vision." I turned back to face them. "It also requires the ability to recognize opportunities, even when they come in unexpected packages." As the family absorbed this revelation, I nodded to the staff to bring out the final course, a perfect tiramisu made from my grandmother's recipe. "The question is," I said, taking my seat again, "are you ready to be part of a real business?" The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with one of our handmade bread knives. But this wasn't just about revenge or vindication. What happened next would determine not only our business future, but the legacy of everything I built. Victoria Winchester stared at the tiramisu in front of her, the same dessert she'd ragged about countless times, never knowing it came from the woman she dismissed as a simple baker. The silence was broken only by the gentle clink of silver against fine china as James tasted his dessert, a small smile playing at his lips. "All this time," Richard said finally, his banker's composure cracking, "we've been advising you about business while you were." He gestured helplessly at the financial reports. "Building an empire." "I finished for him," I said. "But today isn't about embarrassing you. It's about moving forward as a family and as potential business partners." I pressed another button and new images appeared on the screen. Architectural renderings of Bellusa locations in London, Paris, and Tokyo. Market analyses, profit projections, and expansion strategies. "As you can see from these slides," I explained, "an international expansion will require significant capital. The Winchester Financial Group has the global connections we need." I paused, making eye contact with each family member. Any partnership would require some changes in how we relate to each other. Victoria set down her spoon, her hands trembling. "Why even offer us this opportunity after how we've treated you?" she asked. "Because success without family to share it with is empty," I said, thinking of my grandmother. "And because sometimes the biggest victory isn't proving people wrong, it's giving them a chance to prove themselves right." That's when Amanda, of all people, started laughing. Not her usual polite society laugh, but real, genuine laughter. "All those times we lectured you about business, while you were probably calculating international market penetration rates in your head," she said between laughs. Her laughter broke the tension, and even Victoria cracked a smile, tears glimmering in her eyes. Richard was still poring over the financial reports, his expression shifting from disbelief to admiration. "These numbers are extraordinary," he murmured. "Your profit margins, your growth rate. And you did this without any major outside investment." I nodded. Every Bellusa location was built on reinvested profits. No loans, no outside investors, just good food, good business sense, and my grandmother's recipes. "Why keep the bakery when you have all this?" Victoria asked quietly. I smiled, thinking of that morning's fresh bread. "The bakery keeps me grounded. It reminds me why I started this business, not for profit but for passion. Every cupcake I sell there means as much to me as every 5-star review Bellusa receives." James reached over and took my hand. "That's what I fell in love with," he said, addressing his family. "Not the success I didn't even know about, but the passion, the authenticity. Everything you've been dismissing is exactly what made all this possible." Epilogue. The next few hours transformed our family dynamics forever. Richard, the shrewd banker, finally saw me as a business equal, spending hours discussing expansion strategies and offering valuable insights about international markets. Amanda, with her marketing background, immediately began brainstorming ideas for the global brand launch. "And Victoria?" She asked to learn how to bake. "I want to understand," she said, wiping away tears. "I want to understand how you built all this from flour, sugar, and dreams." Over the next year, everything changed. The Winchester Financial Group became an important partner in helping my restaurant chain, Bellusa, grow overseas. But even more important, our family changed. Victoria started coming to my bakery every Wednesday morning. She learned how to make croissants and slowly realized that being a baker isn't something small or silly. Richard, who used to talk about having the right background, began talking about how real success comes from passion. Today, Bellusa has 50 locations around the world. At our very first restaurant, there's now a photo wall. One picture shows Victoria proudly holding her first batch of pastries. I still open the bakery early in the morning at least once a week, covered in flour, doing what I've always loved. Last month, at the opening of our new restaurant in Paris, Victoria stood next to me as I cut the ribbon. She leaned in and said, "I was so wrong. Success isn't about status or where you come from. It's about having the courage to follow your passion, even when others don't get it." I squeezed her hand and said, "You're right. The best kind of success isn't proving people wrong. It's giving them a chance to grow and change." James smiled at us, probably thinking about that Thanksgiving dinner that started it all. Now, our family gatherings are different. We still talk business, but now Victoria brings samples of her latest baked goods for everyone to try. Richard shares investment tips while kneading dough. Amanda's marketing talks often turn into mini cooking classes. And me? I still run my business empire, but I never gave up baking. Because real success doesn't mean choosing between being small or big. It means staying true to what you love and being open to change, even from the people who once looked down on you. In the end, the best recipes, just like the best success stories, are about how all the pieces come together.